Okay, good evening or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Will Michaelopoulos, proud Spider from the class of 1985, and a member of the Board of Directors of the University of Richmond Alumni Association. I'd like to welcome everyone from our Spider family who's joined us tonight. It's my privilege to moderate tonight's conversation with UR alumni Kyle Long, which is brought to you by URAA. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, the URAA seeks to enhance the engagement of alumni with the university, students, and fellow alumni to sustain the university's legacy of excellence and spirit of community for generations to come. And I'd add that I'm very proud of the varied ways that our alumni community has come together during these pandemic period. Since this is a virtual event, I wanted to mention a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. You can view this webinar like any virtual lecture hall. Please feel free to use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions you may have during the discussion, and I'll be sure to incorporate them during the program. We do have a number of questions, a good number of them actually, that were submitted in advance that will probably either be answered during the course of the discussion or will be sure to cover during the Q&A period. So there's no need for those of you to resubmit those. So let's get started. Kyle Long is a Hollywood feature film and television writer, producer, and the showrunner of the recent limited series Unsolved, The Murders of Tupac and Notorious B.I.G. He has also worked on the popular USA series Suits. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm good.
So for my edification, maybe others too, what is the definition of a showrunner compared to screenwriting? Is it just exactly what it sounds like?
Yeah, I guess so. It's basically you're technically in charge. You kind of oversee all aspects of a television show. It can depend depending on the show and who you're partnered up with. But when I did it, it was basically, hiring writers, coming up with all the episodes. But then there's the actual writing process of it all, obviously. But then there's the whole production component of it, which is making the actual show. I had a great partner on my show who had done a ton of television, and he took a ton off my plate as far as actually making the show. Okay. I wouldn't pretend to know about, so much about the physical production of making a television show. But yeah, you're at the end of the day, I guess the success, the creative elements of the show come down to you, good or bad. So on the show I did, there's stuff about it I love, and there's stuff about it that bothers me, but they were kind of all my mistakes. So
got it. Okay, yeah. That's great. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Before we get into the career, let's go back a little pre-career and learn a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in Northern Virginia, Alexandria, right outside DC. Yeah.
And any family members or anybody in the field that got you interested in this?
In Hollywood?
Yeah.
No. But definitely big family of readers, and I would say that was a big inspiration. That was really, where love for writing started, with just loving reading books.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. And then as a member of the alumni recruiting committee, and done interviews for potential spiders. I have to ask, why Richmond? How did you get there? What made you come to UR?
Well, my sister was there, which is great because now her daughter, my niece, is there. So definitely a big Richmond family, and my sister met her husband at Richmond. So I was definitely a bit of I wasn't a great student. It was in my head a lot in high school. I did fine grade-wise, but I definitely drove my parents crazy. And when it came to going to college, I think my sister being there made me feel better and made my parents feel better. And when I went to visit it and saw the campus, it was just spectacular. But I had some growing up to do, and I think that was a big, it was probably the best part about Richmond. It really allowed me to grow up a bit.
Okay, what'd you major in?
Oh, I majored in American Studies. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I don't think my parents were thrilled about that, but and I was a minor in English, and I got my teaching certificate. I thought I was going to maybe teach elementary school and like write crime novels in the summer, but I learned pretty quickly that I was not cut out to teach elementary school. Um, but yeah, but I would actually say American Studies is a pretty great major if you don't if you want to be a writer, because it's a combination of a lot of different things, history and political science, and certainly wasn't too taxing at the time, so it allowed me a lot of time to daydream. So yeah.
Interesting. And did you know when you got, you were in school that you wanted to write, you wanted to do screenplays, or it was just
I don't think I
sure?
knew. I didn't think about screenplays probably until the end of college, but I knew in the back of my mind that I like to write and I love to read and I love books and I love movies. And I think I just also had no idea uh, what I wanted to do. Nothing else really, jumped out at me. So yeah, I kind of think it was all or nothing.
And so you're a lover of read. You love to read. You love to write. You graduate. What's the journey that gets you to LA and start doing this?
Well, I'd written, I think, a screenplay at the end of college, and then I wrote one. I had to save some money to move to LA, live with my buddies still in Richmond my first year out, and really had to, I think, convince my parents that I wasn't gonna show up in LA and just be homeless. So that took about a year, and then I moved out to LA, and I was, I like that. I think I've been very fortunate, and in a lot of ways. I got a pretty good job working at the Writers Guild pretty quickly when I showed up in LA as a temp. And, that was a great job because the job itself was just kind of 9 to 5, like data processing and stuff like that. But I had all the time in the world to go to their library and read scripts. And I did that for a couple of years. And I met a writer who I became very good friends with. And he got an overall deal, and television hired me as his assistant. And that whole time I was writing and living with my buddies in LA and, just really growing up, and I was having a really good time. And I just kept writing. And I'd say about 5 years into being in LA, I sold my first screenplay, which looking back at it was really, really quick.
Wow, what was that
Yeah.
like? What was that about?
The
That
first
screen.
screenplay, the first I had written a couple scripts that I thought, oh, this is what people will want, like big ideas, like action movies and stuff. And then I wrote a screenplay, and they didn't sell. No one wanted them, and it was just hard to get people to read them. And then I grew up a really diehard Washington football team fan. I guess that's what you can
Oh,
call it now.
yes.
And I was obsessed with this football player, Darrell Green. And
Oh,
I
sure.
wrote a screenplay kind of based on that, and about a guy who gets picked to kick a field goal at the halftime of Monday Night Football. And it was kind of comedy, dramedy, and that was the thing that sold. It was really like a personal thing, and it was a good lesson. And I come back to that a lot because even now, I feel like you can really get bogged down in the what do people want, and sometimes you just got to write what you love, and that's the stuff that really seems to break through.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the process. We talked about this earlier, like how it goes from an idea, to eventually, what is the process of going from an idea, writing it, and then getting it produced?
Um,
Is
it
it is
can
it one formula or is it?
no. In my case, I've made a living doing this, and sometimes a good one, and sometimes a bad one. And I think the only thing I can ever control, and I think anyone can control, is you got to sit down and work, come up with ideas, write stuff. So it can be something you write on spec, meaning you just kind of lock yourself in a room and you come up with an idea and you work on it and you write the script, and then you try to get people to buy it. You
Mm-hmm.
send it out, you get agents, stuff like that. And then there's also the idea when you're a little more established, you come up with an idea and you pitch it to people and you try to get them to pay you to write it. I've I've had any success, it's always been kind of from the spec way,
Mm-hmm.
like I'll get jobs, I'll go pitch and get jobs. But I think the best stuff I've written, even the stuff that hasn't gotten made, has always been stuff that I just kind of sat down and couldn't get out of my head and wrote. So there's really no set way to do it. I mean, I have, been out here a long time. I have a ton of writer friends, and everybody's breaking in story is different. The way a lot of them work is different. I have friends that never write on spec. I have friends that are, are really good at kind of coming up with an idea and kind of wowing people in a room,
selling
presenting it. Yeah. So, and they're not, I mean, it's a funny thing, you kind of become a writer because you're probably a little bit of an introvert, and, you don't see yourself as a manager of people. You don't see yourself as someone who wants to kind of get up and sell. But that is, at a certain point, you are kind of required to do that, and you get more and more comfortable doing it as you go. But it's pretty eye-opening when you see that you got to be a people person to an extent to have some success.
And you've written TV and movies. Is there a big difference between the two process?
Yeah.
Or is it...
No, I mean, my movie career, if you can call it that, was I sold a lot of screenplays, and none of them got made. I kind of look back at it going, oh, it's because I was, outside of the first thing I sold, which was a real passion project, I then got hired to write a lot of stuff. And I just think maybe my heart wasn't in it. Or sometimes you write stuff that just doesn't get made. It's, it's just an odds game at a certain point. The movie business is changing, but it's primarily a director's medium. It's like, I would write a script and people would get all excited about it, and they hand it over, and like they'd want to get a director involved, and you get replaced, and they're just empowering the director so much. Whereas in television, it's much more writer driven. It's actually kind of odd how different it is. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's probably, I like working with really talented directors in television. And it's weird to see like all these big major film directors come over to TV, and suddenly it's like a guy like me theoretically telling them what to do. I'm sure it's pretty interesting for them. But I mean, that's the big difference, is that in television, it's really a writer-driven medium.
Okay. What would you consider your first big break in the business?
Selling my first screenplay, for sure. Yeah. But, that was the big one. But I'd say just kind of coming out here and getting jobs that allowed me to write. You can come out to Hollywood and kind of get, if you want to be a writer, and kind of get lost in these jobs like that are just exhausting. And if you're like on set and you're just working all day long, and then you don't have time to write, or you go work at an agency, maybe you wanted to be a writer, but you're suddenly all your energy is spent reading other people's scripts and working for people. And I never had that job. I never worked for like a jerk. I look back at it and think I was really lucky.
Oh, that's great. So, all right, one big question I'm sure many who are watching need to know. Kid from Alexandria, Virginia, he loves to write, he loves to read. How does he come to produce a major critically acclaimed documentary on two of the biggest rappers of our time and their mysterious murders? How does this happen?
Well, critically acclaimed, that's kind. But and it was a series, but it's that story. I get that question a lot, and I get it a lot now because obviously I'm white. I grew up with those, Biggie and Tupac were my generation, so I just remember the East Coast, West Coast rap war and how all that stuff very well. And then as I got older, when I moved to LA, I lived right next to the Peterson Auto Museum, which is where Biggie was killed. And I just always thought like, oh, this is insane. If you've ever been there, how could this happen? And no one got arrested for it. So I just was obsessed with it for years and years and years and years, and would read everything about it. Couldn't get it out of my head. And I didn't really think I was the guy to write it at the time, because I was just kind of writing movies that weren't getting made, and most of them were comedies, even though deep down I always wanted to write more dramatic stuff. So I just stayed on top of it. It always interested me. I kind of couldn't get enough about the story. And then years later, I was writing on a television show, and I had some stability in my life. And when we were on hiatus, I just was like, man, I kind of know so much about this, and I'm really excited about it. I should just write it. So thinking, quite honestly, that maybe it would get me on a different TV show or just open some new doors.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got, people just really went crazy for it. So it was just one of those things where you just never know. And it was fun because I had so many ups and downs, and had seen so many things that I had written either not sell, or things that I love the most would get bought and kind of fall apart. I really got to enjoy it because I think I had a pretty healthy perspective on, how many things have to fall into place.
Right.
Yeah.
And was this the first piece of work that you were the showrunner for, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, I interviewed him about a month ago, and he's a colleague of yours. This is where you work with fellow alum Jamie McShane.
Yes,
Yes.
Jamie's
But
a
you didn't
really,
know you were alum when you met, right?
no, it's a fun story. Jamie, really amazing actor and things like Bloodline and Bosch, and he was in this great show Southland. And I just knew Jamie from a bunch of different things I had seen him in, and we were casting the show, and it was pretty cool role. And I wanted him, and he wasn't available at the time because of the show Bloodline. It's a crazy business, but so many things had to happen for him to become available. And when he did, we were talking to each other on the phone, and he was like, we just were getting to know each other. And then he asked me where I went to college, and I told him, and he's like, what, are you kidding me? Yeah. So small world, but
Wow.
Jamie's a great guy, and
Yeah.
he lives close to me. And when 2020 is over, maybe we can actually get a beer together in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to this. Like, from your perspective, how has COVID impacted what you do, and the process? Has it? Is it different
Yeah.
for writers than it is actors? We asked Jamie that.
Yeah, for me personally, I've been developing, so I'm writing stuff. So it hasn't, I'm not running a show or anything right now. I'm just kind of in a room writing some scripts. It hasn't changed things too much. It's changed things in the pitching process. Whereas before you would kind of schlep all over the city, and like you were going in for meetings and you're telling what your idea is. Now it's a lot of Zoom for that, which I think everyone is learning how to navigate still, and the best way to pitch a project over Zoom. So that's changed. My friends that are in writers' rooms right now, or running writers' rooms, I think they think it's hard. It's
Yeah.
just, a lot about being a writer, especially when you're writing for a television show. In my experience is, you're sitting in a room, and you're kind of batting ideas around, and you get stuck, and then you go for a walk or something, or you're in the kitchen and you kind of figure it out when you're not trying to figure it out. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
Zoom allows for that. And but then again, you don't have to leave your house, and you don't have to drive from the east side to Santa Monica. So
Avoid the
things
traffic.
like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll get to some questions soon. What's your advice for UR students interested in pursuing a career in screenwriting or production while at UR and then post grad? What are some words of wisdom that you would, based on your career?
I mean, if you want to be a writer, the only thing I feel really qualified advice to give, or the only advice I feel qualified to give, is you just got to write. I meet a lot of people that say they want to be writers, and they're not really writing anything. It's always a little odd. It's like they're more in love with the idea of it than actually doing the work, because it's always hard. It's just as hard for me now as it was when I wasn't doing this. So you have to really, I think, love writing. You have to, and it will take a long time, and it'll definitely take a long time to have success in this business. So, and it's a hard business, and you get your heart broken a lot, but it's kind of what they pay you for.
Right.
So, in my case, I moved to LA, and I got a job in the business, and the whole time I was writing. I think that's probably what you need to do, is come to LA or to New York. Are there exceptions, and is it maybe changing now because of Zoom and things like that? Sure, but and there are definitely writers that don't live in LA and New York, but the successful ones that I know had success and then moved back. And I think even that is kind of hard. But again, maybe it's changing. But I think you got to love to do it. You really got to just keep at it, and you got to go out and get a job in the business, because it's not who you know. I don't really subscribe to that, but sometimes you meet people that put you in the position maybe to get lucky. Like, you've done the work,
Right.
and then you meet the right person at the right time, and they're, well, you want to read a script, and it just, things kind of click. But no one's going to buy your script or any of that, just because, like,
it's not good.
Yeah, you've got to do the work. Yeah.
Right. And anything that could prepare a student while they're at school at UR, anything they could study, do?
I just watch movies, read books, write. You can get, when I was starting to do this, trying to do this, you couldn't get screenplays on the internet. You had to go, like, order them, go to bookstores. And I think a couple, famous screenplays had been published. But now everything is at your fingertips. And, a big part of it is watching movies. So how easy is that? I mean, anyone could do that. Yeah.
So it's just a passion for it. It's really a passion.
That's it. I don't, I didn't really, when I was at UR, I don't believe they offered any film classes. I've had tons of friends out here that went to fancy film schools, and I think it's probably a blast. And I think you can learn a lot, but it doesn't guarantee you a job. I mean, all my friends, you get out paying $70,000 a year for USC, and a lot of times you're in line to get a PA job, just like, a guy from University of Richmond who just got there, so
Got it. Yeah.
There's no shortcuts.
Anything to avoid you'd recommend? Is there anything like you wouldn't do again?
Yeah, I mean, it's just experience. You get caught up with trying to get an agent, and you get caught up with all the, like, I have my one script done and it's a masterpiece. I need an agent now. I got to get in the door. And the truth is, it's probably terrible. And, but maybe your third script's going to be really good. And you just need to keep writing while you're meeting people, while you're trying to get your work out there. I spent a lot of time after I sold my first screenplay, producers would come to me with ideas, and I wasted so much time with, like, just coming up with pitches and all this nonsense instead of, like, writing the next script. So you just have to be writing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. We have a lot of questions, and I think they're not, they're long answered questions. So I think we might start with some of them now, if that's okay. One student says, and we've touched on it a little bit, did you know this was what you wanted to do as a career? And I think the answer is yes. And has your work evolved as a writer since leaving?
Yes.
You are.
Yes. I mean, I've just, you just grow up, your interests change a little bit. The first thing I sold was a comedy. It was kind of a dramedy. But I've definitely grown up to be turn into more of a dramatic writer, which I love. And that just kind of happened. Like, you grow, just like you evolve as a human being, you evolve as a writer. And I think the business sometimes forgets that, but I guess I understand why.
All right. Someone asked, how did you know you would succeed at being a film and TV writer? How and when did you know?
I didn't know, and I'm still hoping that I have. I didn't. But I honestly, I approached it this way, so my parents wouldn't just worry too much. It's like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to give it a shot, and if I don't make it, I think I'll find something else that I love to do. Like so that I don't know how long I would have given it, but even if I didn't quote, make it, I think I still would be writing. That's how you're a writer, right? Whatever you do, I would be writing. I would be waking up in the morning to work on something else. So yeah.
And it's kind of a follow-up. Did you ever have any doubt about your path? And how did your mindset help you achieve success? Is a question that came from a student.
I mean, I had doubt right before this Zoom, so I mean, I guess it's kind of, you have to have a healthy sense of denial in this business. When you move out to Hollywood and you say, this is what I want to do, people roll their eyes. And if you start thinking about the odds of it, it seems a bit insane. But you narrow those odds by really doing the work, like that's what I think. So I just don't think about it much, because otherwise I would have more gray hair than I do right now.
Okay. And how do you keep a writing room engaged and productive from home?
I'm not doing that right now, but I've helped out on some things. I think it's just, God, I think shorter periods of time with some breaks, things like that. Probably less goofing off. You kind of have targets to talk about when you get on these meetings. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, my friends that are running shows right now on Zoom do not seem to like it. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're hiring writers that they literally have never met, like they've only met them over Zoom. And writers' rooms can be pretty political in very stupid ways. So I'm not sure how that all plays out over Zoom.
Got it. This is an interesting question. Do you think networking is different in the entertainment industry than it is other industries? And what advice would you have? I'm coming from a marketing background, networking was, critical to meet people. Is it the same in your field?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not a big schmoozer, a great small talk person. But I think maybe what happens in Hollywood is, like, if you have any success, you sell a screenplay, people, a lot of times you write something and people don't buy it, but they love it and they couldn't get anyone to buy it and they just want to meet you. And what happens is sometimes you meet, and this can go early on when you just get to Hollywood too, when you're just meeting people, from all different cities, you'll meet people that you have something in common with, like all my friends in Hollywood, when I moved out to Los Angeles, they were the same kind of people that my friends at UR were. You gravitate towards people that you get along with and you like spending time with, and that's the same in the business. And you'll become friends and you'll find people that share, your sensibility and are passionate about the same kind of stories you're passionate about. So that kind of networking to me is just called making friends, and that can go a long way. I mean, those people stay in your life, and a lot of them stick around in the business.
Yeah.
This kind of like, I'm going to like go to a party and meet the right person, I guess it could maybe help get a script read. Doesn't mean they're going to buy it, just because they liked you at a party. No, right. But yeah, I'm sure to some degree going out there and being a go-getter can really help. It's not me, so it's hard for me to really give advice about, but yeah.
Okay. And there's some questions now that have come in. It seems casting agents like to pick male and female newcomers who resemble A-list stars. Am I imagining that? Any perspective there?
Oh man, you mean like if someone resembles like a young Brad Pitt or something?
Yeah.
I guess I haven't. I think they like to. I don't know. I think they look for sometimes attractive people, and a lot of attractive people look the same. I don't know. I haven't thought about that one. Yeah.
Have you seen the Netflix show Episodes? It's great. If you have seen it, what do you think of it?
I have not seen it.
Yeah, I don't know it either.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that there's so much more being produced by online services, do you think the quality of both the writing and production has gone down?
No, I would think, if anything, the opposite. There's just so much stuff. There's a ton of great stuff, and there's a ton of terrible stuff. So I guess you could you could go seek out horrible stuff that you can go, right, what is this? This is so much worse than anything I've ever seen. But man, there's so much amazing stuff being done by Netflix and Amazon and these big streamers. And I think a lot of it just has to do with we've gone from the age of 22 episodes of non-serialized storytelling to these kind of like 8-hour movies, and it's such a better form. It's a long novel basically, or a 10-hour movie. It's such a better form, and it lends itself to better stuff.
Has that, with the development of that, has it given more job opportunities? It would seem that there's so many more companies producing movies, ways to watch it, and TV?
Yeah, I think it's yes and no. There's probably more jobs than there were 15, 20 years ago because there's more content, but it's probably, you were in the 90s or writing on a sitcom, you were making a really good living. And now it's like, 8-episode shows, small writing rooms, you're kind of trying to piece these jobs together. So I do think in some ways the kind of, and I'm sure it will keep evolving, but it's hard to make a living now as just someone that would go from one staff writing job to the next, or at least the kind of living some of these people were making, 10, 15 years ago. And also you're living in an incredibly expensive city. So it's gotten harder, but it's also, there is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of really good stuff being done because of it.
Any big differences between New York, LA writing? You said you have to go to one or the other. Is there?
I mean, I don't think you have to, but I think LA still seems to be the epicenter for it all. But there's stuff being done in New York. What's weird is most stuff's being shot in Georgia right now. So I'm always like, why isn't everyone just moving to Georgia? But
really,
it's just where the business is.
And why is that?
Tax credits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Always about the money.
Yeah.
All right. Another question. When you sell that first screenplay, what changes for you? Do you get more opportunities? Join the Screenwriters Guild?
You join the guild. It was when I sold my first screenplay, the movie business was a little different. There were more jobs in the movie business. I sold a script and then immediately got hired to write another movie. Now the movie business is in really dire straits. It started with, kind of boring, but it started 20 years ago, 15 years ago with the DVD market basically collapsing.
Right.
And because that financed so many, you could have a movie that didn't do well at the box office, but then everyone bought it on DVD. That's not really the case anymore. The movie business for the most part has become just, huge, comic book movies and things like that. So, so much stuff has gravitated towards television. And really what you're going to start, we're seeing it already is you're just going to start seeing more and more movies on television. So, and there are a lot of them are really good. So we're kind of living in an interesting period. Yeah. But when I sold my first screenplay, I definitely thought my life was going to change, and it didn't at all. same boring life.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Another question, what has been your experience, if you have it, with writing reality shows?
I've never written a reality show. I've watched a lot of reality shows with my wife and acted like, I don't like it, but secretly I'm loving it. But that's been my only experience. Yeah.
Okay. And these sound like these are coming in from friends of yours. What is your favorite beer?
Well, in college, it was probably Rolling Rock, which I can't get in LA. But I have terrible taste in beer. The whole craft beer craze is completely wasted on me in LA. So yeah.
Interesting. And who was your childhood idol, if you had one? It was
this Washington football player, Darryl Green. And what's interesting is I'm now hopefully going to write a movie about, co-write a movie about Doug Williams, who was the quarterback of the Washington football team. So it's kind of come full circle, and so you never know how these things are all going to play out. So I'm getting a kick out of that.
That's what I was going to ask. What's on the horizon for you? What are you working on?
I'm working on that.
Most promising.
It's weird. I have a bunch of things I've written and are in various stages of hopefully getting made, or who knows. And like the Doug Williams thing is something I'm in the middle of pitching with kind of fancy people. But I've had some of the things that I think are going to get made don't, and stuff that I think has no shot does. So I'm in the middle of like pitching a lot of stuff. I'm going to do a podcast for Apple, like write a true crime podcast, which I've been, is going to be nice. I'm really fascinated by true crime podcasts. So I'm going to do a thing I wanted to do as a TV show, but now I'm going to do it first as a podcast with like these amazing journalists. So I'm really excited about that. I like to write, so it doesn't really matter what the medium is. It's really just kind of what gets me excited, I guess.
Got it. So with all of these like projects in various stages, what's a typical day like for you? What like when you get up, is it every day different, or is it kind of regimented?
No, it's depressingly the same. It's 2020. No, I mean, I have a wife and two fairly young kids, and I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah.
My wife works in the business. She works for FX. She does like marketing. It's all those amazing trailers and commercials you see.
Oh yeah.
She's way more talented than I am. And I just get up, kind of get the kids going, and I rent an office, which where I'm at right now, and I'm still going to. There's no one
Okay.
here. I have to have a place to go to work, and usually I just go to work and sit down and goof off until self-loathing just really takes over, and then I shut off the internet and get some work done. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Some more
Yeah.
questions have come in. When you conceive an idea and write a script, do you ask a trusted person to edit it, give you comments before you finalize it for the pitch?
Well, as far as coming up with an idea, yes, I will run it by friends, but usually what happens in my case is if you can't get it out of your head, it's probably a good idea. Like if you keep, like
Right.
if one idea leads to another idea, and you keep coming back to it, you should probably do it. Because what happens is like, I've had so many times when like an agent will say, well, email me 6 ideas and we'll tell you which one to write. They never want you to write the thing you want to write, and they never are right. Period. Like
Uh-huh.
it's just, to me, it's hard to write a good script. So you might as well write the thing that really excites you, and it's really usually that's going to come across on the page. And if you're pitching something, I think the same thing. Like they're going to feel the enthusiasm.
Got it.
And that's always a good thing.
Okay. And then another question, when can we catch your podcast on Apple? What will it be called?
That's a good question. We haven't started doing it yet, but it's going to be called Run Bambi Run.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of far off.
Yeah. I mean, although those things, it's not like making a TV show. They turn around pretty quick, but we have to do a ton of interviews, and there's a lot to be finalized with that, but that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. And another question, how do you buy the rights to a story in order to turn it into a screenplay? Do you have to pitch the idea to a production company before writing?
I've kind of done all versions of that. So that's a good question. One I actually feel qualified to answer. For the show I did, I wrote it on spec, but I knew if someone wanted to do it, I was going to have to go get the life rights to this police detective and this book he had written. So I kind of once I had a studio who was interested, I said, hey, you got to go get this book and make a deal with this guy. And they were really gung-ho, and he had a lot of suitors, but I had a script and I had really interested people. So, I had to win him over, but so I kind of did it backwards, but since then, I've had people option books for me. I've never done it with my own money, although I've thought about it. Usually it's not that much money. If you're trying to option like, something that isn't, in the zeitgeist, something that isn't like just come out and
Right.
it's just been sitting around and is, collecting dust. It's not a ton of money. You can reach out to that person and, through their publisher or whatever it is, you can track people down and say, I'm interested in doing this and I'd like to option it. And, you can do it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, back to the beer and now. So if your beer game isn't strong, how about wine? Any California wines you love?
Geez, this is how I buy wine. I'm like, what's in the $20
Sounds like
variety? It's not too cheap at the store, but it's not, not too expensive, but not embarrassingly cheap when you go to, the grocery store. So I do drink too much of it during 2020. So yeah.
Here's a question from a UR student. Do you have any tips or tricks to use to make a strong pitch to television networks or studios?
I mean, it depends. It depends. I mean, it depends where you are in your career, if you're trying to get someone to read your script and you're like starting out and you have the opportunity to pitch somebody, it's probably like short and to the point, and this is what it's about, and this is why you think why it's important to you, and you're the person to write it, and you're just trying to get them excited. Just show your enthusiasm and your passion. And I always think about, people can only retain so much information when you're talking to them. So this idea that you're going to give them every detail of your story seems a bit ridiculous. I'm going to pitch something soon over Zoom, and I've definitely been experimenting with like having, a video and all this stuff, because just like a visual way of telling the story, because just staring at these boxes is pretty tough. And I don't know, enthusiasm. But honestly, people ask that question. It's like, well, you should be more focused on the writing of the script usually.
Right.
Yeah.
You seem to come back to that. It's always about the writing. It's really about the work, right?
Yeah.
A little different direction. What surprised you most about your first impression of the West Coast after growing up in Virginia?
That's a good question.
Do you consider yourself West Coast now?
I've been here over 20 years, and everyone still thinks I'm visiting when they meet me. Well, that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. It's really, LA is crazy. I love it and hate it at the same time. The people you meet, you're never bored. Put it that way.
Right.
So there's a lot of. It's just different than. I guess that's the answer. It's growing up in Virginia and then living in Richmond. You go to LA and you're certainly. I'm sure it's different now in Richmond, but you're certainly exposed to a lot of things maybe you didn't see in Richmond, but it's kind of great, and you get used to things pretty quick, and mostly you're just around a lot of people that want to do the same thing you do, so that's really fun when you're young. So yeah.
Do you get back to Richmond much?
Not enough. I love Richmond. And like I said, I've got a whole bunch of family going there, or did go there, and I have a ton of friends there that I miss. And it was my 25th last year, and I couldn't go because of COVID. So we're hoping this, I'll make up for it.
Very good. And any other questions? We seem to, I think, answer just about every one of them. Any, Kyle, any last kind of words of wisdom for anybody again trying to get into this business now that they're at you are, and they have a passion for writing and reading?
If I can do it, right, anyone can do it. That's the way I look at it. It is a hard business, but it's a really fun business. My two girls, and I won't be shocked if they decide to kind of try to get in this business, because they see me doing it and they meet my friends and, come to work, and I think they get a kick out of it. And it's totally possible to make a living in this business. It's also, it's not for everyone.
Right.
So I think the earlier you start definitely helps, because I think a huge part of this job is perseverance. That's, like it's probably going to be a long road, but if you stick with it, you'll probably have some success. But yeah, it can be done, I guess, would be the piece of advice. Yeah.
Have you done any mentoring?
Yeah.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there for any of our students that are on here. So I do want to mention, if you want to get even some more in-depth perspective of Kyle's career, I would recommend the podcast Optimize Yourself, which is hosted by Zach Arnold. I listened to that in preparation for my interview with Kyle today. It's episode 58, and Kyle worked with Zach on Unsolved, in which I guess he was the editor of.
Yeah, Zach's he's an editor, and he's got this pretty cool podcast. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, and I just found, it really gets into, more in depth of the process and the work itself. So I just, a little call out. I thought it was really good and great perspective. So, And with that, if there are no other questions, I want to thank you very much, Kyle, for your time. Great meeting you. Really fascinating. I'm sure it was very helpful for those students that were listening and the Spider family. So really appreciate it.
Thank you. And hi to my friends that are watching right now. I miss you
Watching live.
guys.
Yep. Happy holidays, everybody, and go Spiders. Thanks again, Kyle.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.